you'll notice that every governor who claims to be a fiscal conservative and a social liberal ends as a big flop. Governor Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, he couldn't terminate anything in the end. He'd announced that he was thinking of terminating the Department of Bureaucratic Time Servers, and he then has to set up an impact study to examine for 12 years whether they can, the impact of terminating the Department of Bureaucratic Time Servers. The social liberalism is catastrophically expensive. Who do you think uses government? Who do you think uses government services? What class makes up the dependency class? We were talking about single mothers. Single mothers are the most reliable voters for big government. That's what liberals understand, that it's actually in their interest. It's actually in their interest to undermine conventional forms of family arrangement, because it makes it makes women in particular easier supplicants for permanent government services. The idea that there's no connection between the social issues and the fiscal issues is absurd. The abortion rates in New York City are getting close to 50% of the birth rate. Doesn't anybody think that has fiscal implications? When people talk about the jobs Americans won't do, in large part it's because in many parts of this country there aren't enough Americans to do these jobs. The link between fiscal conservatism and social conservatism is the same, and that is why unless you approach the fiscal conservatism as a moral issue, you're fighting on the wrong grounds. It's not about balancing these books. It's about understanding that this isn't something we should be attempting to balance even in the first place.
Hi, first I want to start by saying that I'm a native Detroiter, and I want to thank you for saying so much more eloquently what I was trying to tell people all along. But the main question is, I just wanted to hear your opinion of the statements by Representative Jesse Jackson Jr. the other day.
What did he say?
When he was talking about there should be a constitutional amendment giving all students laptop computers and iPods.
Right. In the European Union, the European Commissioner for whatever it is calling for a European constitutional right to a certain amount of government-paid foreign vacation. So one shouldn't underestimate the ability of big government to discover more human rights, even as they're taking away all the real ones. Human rights, this is actually a big point. Human rights, Magna Carta. Magna Carta, what's it about? It's about restraints that the subjects impose on the sovereign. That's what real rights are. They're restraints imposed on what the state can do to you. We've now entirely inverted the meaning so that human rights are gifts. They're baubles that a gracious sovereign confers on his subjects. And in this case, it's particularly stupid. Barack Obama in 2008 was campaigning on the basis that there should be he was offering free iTunes downloads. This is even more ridiculous than federally subsidized cowboy poetry. If iTunes downloads are not commercially viable, nothing is. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame receives federal subsidy. If you have to subsidize laptops and cell phones, you're not subsidizing education. You're not dealing with the digital divide. You're in fact increasing dependency on the government. And big government makes small citizens. Big government makes small citizens. Everybody has a cell phone. You go to the poorest part of town, they've got cell phones. Nobody needs government cell phones. Nobody needs government cell phones. Jesse Jackson Jr. I don't begrudge the desperation of this, but right now the healthy reaction when any congressman or government bureaucrat is calling for something new is to laugh at him. We've got $14 trillion of debt. We have to in other words, we have to pay back $14 trillion before we're even broke. To get to being broke, we have to pay back $14 trillion. You laugh, and you know why you laugh? Because you know that nobody here has any intention of doing that. Nobody in Washington has any intention of that. We were talking at dinner about how the Canadian government in the early 90s paid down the debt. Paid down the debt. Nobody in Washington is talking about paying down the debt. We're issuing debt equivalent to that of a G7 economy every single year. US government spending presupposes that the world is willing to drop the equivalent of the Canadian economy into US Treasury bonds every single year. It presupposes that the world is willing to drop the equivalent of an economy twice the size of India's into US Treasury bonds every single year. And that's why it's not happening. That's why the Fed is having to buy the US Treasury bonds, in case you haven't noticed. You understand that? This is the genius accounting now. The Fed is buying US Treasury debt. The United States Treasury issues debt, and the Federal Reserve buys it. Now, I'm sure some of the more deplorable students here, you've been at the end of the month and you get your MasterCard bill and you think, I can't pay anything this month. I tell you what, I'll pay off the minimum interest with my Visa card. And then when my Visa card comes, I'll pay off the minimum interest with my MasterCard, and that should get me through the next 30 years. That is now the official policy of the United States of America. There is simply, every time anybody proposes any kind of new spending, new right, new regulation, you should say, go and see Warren Buffett. Yeah, Warren Buffett supports all this. Get him to write the check for it. Go and see Bill Gates. Get him to write the check for it. Get Bill Gates to hold a bake sale. Because unfortunately, I've got $14 trillion to pay off until I get back to being broke. You can try this at the First National Bank of Hillsdale. Say, I'd like a new laptop and a cell phone. And the bank manager will say, well, you've got an overdraft of $14 trillion. Could we try to get it down to 11 trillion before you start adding up any more? That's what we should be. We should be laughing at every single legislator, even proposing the slightest amount of new government expenditure, because we're done. We're broke.